Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Batman Under the Red Hood. This is like my all-time favorite DC animated original movie, or was it called the DC animated movie universe, whatever they was called back in those days. This is my all-time favorite, and this is my all-time favorite one that has Batman in it, but just my overall favorite overall and everything. It is truly amazing, and I am shocked and surprised that the HBO Max Titan show fumbled this storyline so freaking badly that it is embarrassing. Because this deserves to be a live action movie. It was a critical acclaim when it came back out in 2010. That is 15 years ago. That is insane. And like, when I say this movie is good, not just on a storytelling level, but voice level, music, some of the best music I've ever heard for a Batman property. And it's visually striking and everything. This movie is based on the comic called Under the Hood. It's a sequel to A Death in the Family. A Death in the Family is one of the most famous Batman comics of all time, and it's one of the most famous Robin comics of all time. It is where the second Robin died. I think around the 1980s or so, Jason Todd, they did a poll and you had to call a number and vote if you want this Robin to live or this Robin to die, because a lot of people did not like him and they asked the viewers to vote and everything. Supposedly it was rigged. Supposedly somebody rigged something to dial the number for no over and over again, and Jason Todd met his demise. Jason Todd is the one Robin people used to really hate. He wasn't like Dick Grayson. He was a criminal, started off. He was very rude, very blunt, very abrasive and stuff. And fans just did not like him at that time. He was dead for so many years that after a while, people started to have a fondness for him, especially when that comic came out and he got resurrected and everything. Since then, he's now become a fan favorite because he's the Red Hood now. But, when he came back, he wasn't necessarily a good guy. He was an anti-hero slash villain, and he got under Batman's skin more than one time because he is very lethal and he uses guns to murder people and stuff. It's funny how he went from being hated to liked. And same with Damian Wayne. Like, people really hated him, but then they started to come around and like him. And it's just funny how that happens. And so, like, they've never made a Death in the Family animated movie or even like in an episode or nothing like that because it's too dark. Because, the Joker beats Robin with the crowbar and then he blows him up. It's a very striking comic panel. It's been duplicated so many times with like Superman and Supergirl on Crisis and stuff. But it all started with these comics and stuff. Now, they do alter some stuff for this movie. Because I think the way Jason Todd comes back alive, I think Superboy Prime was punching holes in reality, I think. And Jason Todd just kind of, came to life somehow. I don't know. I don't read comics. But in this movie, they tried to they kept every other DC superhero completely out the movie and just kept it to Batman and his rogues gallery. That's how I like when they do it. I get kind of tired when I'm always seeing these crossovers in animated movies and stuff. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. And so, like, they basically came up with a story where it has to involve Ra's al Ghul and the Lazarus Pit. Because how else are you going to bring somebody else from the dead? And so, since that's a great Batman villain who does that already, it made sense here. The alterations they made to like the source material work very well for a self-contained Batman story. They also introduced the Hand of Five or something like that. I forget, like these like assassins with these robotic suits and these like ninja weapons and stuff. They're really cool. I thought for sure they were maybe the Hand of Four or something. I don't know what they're called, but I thought for sure they came from the comic, but they didn't. They came straight from like, you know, this animated movie and stuff. That's how cool they were. And so when it comes to this movie, Bruce Timm is the one who produced it, and he voiced the Riddler, even though the Riddler only makes grunty noises. This movie made $12 million domestic or global, I can't remember which, on DVD sales. Ah, the good old days, man, when like this stuff used to come out on DVD. Now I'm pretty sure these types of movies are done since James Gunn has taken over. And so, like in 2020, they made a sequel movie to this, but I did not like that. It was an interactive DVD. And so basically, when you buy the DVD, you get to choose the fate or whatever happens to these characters and stuff and alter stuff. While that's neat, and while I do like some of the material they did with that, my problem is you can't do that online. If you go to HBO Max, it's what the writers and stuff created for them. So it's pretty much the same exact thing you watch Under the Red Hood, but just a slightly different ending with Bruce Wayne talking to Clark Kent. And I'm just kind of like, why? Why is he there? And why isn't it different from like the original movie? Personally, I don't like the fact that fans get to choose their own fate. I wish the creators would have came up with something completely different, or they could have did just an actual real follow-up movie. When this movie first came out and people saw the ending, a lot of people questioned if Nightwing was really Dick Grayson at the end, or if he was Jason Todd pretending to be Nightwing, similar to what he did in the comics, and then went after Tim Drake, the third Robin and stuff. They could have made a movie out of that, but they didn't. And so this movie was written by, what was his name? I think it's Judd Winick. And it was directed by Brandon Vaititi. And so Brandon is like, you know, he directed a couple of episodes of The Batman from the WB Kids Network and stuff back in the early 2000s, and he's a co-creator of Young Justice. In fact, he brought Bruce Greenwood from this movie on over to play Batman in Young Justice. And when you watch this movie, you can tell some of the art style is kind of similar to that of the Batman. The purple sky and the way the clouds look at night. Batman having these like really thick soles on his boots and everything. The very, very long cape that he wears. And some of the way the buildings are designed. Also, you get the cool blimps from Batman, the animated series, because of course Brandon is a fan of that, and it's a nice homage to that. And not only that, but when you look at it, it kind of feels like a more modern update of Batman the Animated Series, you know, with a dark color palette that's digital, because remember they drew on dark paper back in the 90s and stuff and gave it that cool striking visual style and stuff. So I do love that the way this dude directed it, and it feels too real to be an animated movie. It really feels like this should have been live action. And I missed these movies back in the day with a different art style and the different voice cast and the different continuity and stuff. And because this was based on a comic, I'm all like, wow, it feels like I'm watching the actual comic. It feels like for the first time, I'm looking at how, like, the bat suit should probably look in the comic, and how the gadgets and all this other. Sure, it was updated for a modern audience and stuff, but it just made you feel like you got that comic book experience. You know what I'm saying? And so the voice cast is really stellar. You have Bruce Greenwald, oh no, Greenwood. He did the voice of Batman. And he put a lot of smoke in his voice, he said. Sometimes it wasn't that deep and it was kind of light, but for the most part, it sounds pretty good. But it sounds different. And I do like different at times. I first saw him on a UPN show back in the day. I think it was Nowhere Man. Then Jensen Ackles, he voices the Red Hood Jason Todd, the older version. And I remember him from Dark Angel. Of course, he's in The Boys and stuff, Supernatural. And then you have the Martella brothers and stuff. Vincent Martella, he voices the teenage Jason Todd Robin. And like, I forget, I know I've seen him in live action somewhere. It might have been the fourth season of The Walking Dead. I think he played, God, what's that blonde-headed girl name who was new to the show, who was never in the game? Lori's sister, Becky something. Emma Kinney plays her. Beth, that's it. I think he played her boyfriend for that episode and got bit at the end of the first episode of the fourth season and stuff like that. But then his brother Alexander plays the kid Jason Todd Robin. And they went old school with the Robin look on this, giving him that underwear thing that shows his legs. I hate that so much. But when it comes to the teenage Robin, they gave him an amalgamation of the Jason Todd red and black suit. However, if you look very closely, it looks like it's red, like a red suit and a black cape and black like gloves and boots, but it's not. It's actually a very, very, very dark green because you can see the green highlights in it and stuff. So that's kind of weird that, is red and green the way it is. It just looks bizarre. I prefer red and black. Now, one reason why it's probably red and black-ish, you know what I'm saying, is because that's a lot of people's favorite Robin suit. I know it's like Tim Drake is like, the one from the New Adventures of Batman. That's like Bruce Timm's favorite and stuff. And when it comes to Brandon, well, if you watch Young Justice, you know that the Dick Grayson Robin in that show actually wore Tim Drake's costume. So I think he's a fan of it as well. And so, like, you also have Gary Cole, who comes in as a cameo as Commissioner Gordon, but you have Wade Williams voice that of the Black Mask. And I'm a fan of Black Mask. I started because of the Batman and everything. And he was a character that really grew on me as like a villain. He's this mobster who pretty much micromanages everything and controls everything, very much like the Kingpin. They made some changes to his mask to where his mouth opens and closes when he speaks, because it's supposed to stay completely shut. Black Mask has been appearing a lot lately in Batman media. Like, he's become a very popular new villain and stuff. Not sure how exactly old he is from the comics, but for me, he's like new. And it's sad that, like, what is it? And let's see, about 3 live action appearances Black Mask has made. Only one of them has been good. That's the one from the CW Batwoman show, of all shows. That was the best version ever, even though the mask was way too big. The one on Gotham was horrible. And like, oh God, the one from that Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie was just terrible and everything. And of course, you have that, Wait, who the heck did he play? Jim Poddock. I don't know. Completely. No, I remember Jim Podduck. He played Alfred, and I remember him from an episode of Team Knight Rider. But then, of course, you have the Joker in this, and it's John Domingo. And so he was a perfect Joker because when he played on Kim Possible, he basically played like a Joker variant type thing, you know? And so, like, when they did his Joker, they made him look similar to Heath Ledger's Joker with the long trench coat that's supposed to be like, the top part of the coat, the messy hair and everything. But they gave him regular normal lips, but they gave him more of a sharp edge, like, corner lip smile and everything. But it was cool, and I also gave him the dark eyeshadow for like the eyes. So that was cool. They did that, and he did a really good job as Joker, even though his voice sounded older and sandier and stuff. So this movie is very compelling and very, very emotional because it has to do with the death of one of the Robins, and he died as a teenager of all things. And it causes Batman to become more of a dark, like, tortured soul because he wonders, could this all been avoided if he would have never made Jason Todd Robin? He might have still been alive today. And it's something he has to grapple with. And it's to the point where this Batman is just very, very, very moody and everything. So moody that when Nightwing, Dick Grayson comes back, he is happy to have him there and he never tells him go away or nothing like that. But you can tell by his like dark demeanor that he's not gonna get reattached and everything. He's not gonna allow himself to like, become sympathetic of how their relationship like, soured many years ago when Dick Grayson left him and then, became like, joined the Titans and, went with the Titans and, became Nightwing and stuff like that. It's just because he's just almost like clicked off his emotions. You know what I'm saying? He shut them completely down. And it's kind of, it's interesting because, Dick is all like happy and cheery to be back. But he can sense that Batman kind of just like is giving him the cold shoulder and everything. And that's because that's who Batman became now. He's very cold and everything. And it's because, he feels he let Jason down and died. And it's so sad to see that because there's many layers to Batman. But this is one of those, doesn't say much, has a very dark suit. Is very rough with the villains and everything because he's keeping all that pain inside. And this movie really hits you on an emotional level in the very first minutes. Because we see Batman racing. Oh, I forgot to mention, Ra's al Ghul is in this, and Jason Isaac voices him. So, we see Batman racing to a building trying to save Robin. And we see Robin get the snot beat out of him by the Joker with the crowbar. There's blood, his eyes bloodshot, one of his boots is off and everything, or maybe both of them are. And, he just leaves them there. And the Joker looks and sounds so sinister. Then, as he's crawling, trying to open the door, he can't. He realizes a bomb is about to go off. And he literally only has about 10 seconds left. And you feel that pain, regret, and fear in Jason's eyes as he looks at the bomb, and it's a close-up of his eyes, and he just slowly closes them, and then boom, the whole building explodes, and Batman picks up a dead Robin. But you don't see the blood on his body. This is before they went hardcore with like the blood and the cursing and the slight nudity and everything. This is back when it was still tamed and stuff. Yeah, there are cuss words in it, but not the hardcore stuff that they will later do, like in the New 52 stuff. And you know, this was the best era of DC animated movies because they was movies on more of an emotional level, whereas the New 52 movies were just all action packed. And the Tomorrowverse was just a huge mess. After this, we see Batman 5 years later trying to stop some bad guys and everything. And Dick Grayson comes back into town as Nightwing trying to help him out. Neil Patrick Harris is the one who voices Dick Grayson in this. And he's a perfect Dick Grayson voice. He has that cheerful side to him. And so they fight like a mazo and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, somebody kills the bad guys right before they are right before they're about to confess as to who hired them to steal from the Black Mask. And there's a reason why this person sniped them right before they talk, because it's the person who hired them. Some person named Red Hood, but Batman has no idea who it is. He's wearing a biker jacket and stuff, and he has a red helmet with 2 eye holes to it. And so after like a huge chase, he says something to Batman as Nightwing got hurt. And when he replayed it on the computer, he realized that the Red Hood knows that Batman is Bruce Wayne, so it freaks him out. And so we get tons of flashbacks and everything. And because like as this is going on, Nightwing, who's now out of the movie because he's hurt with an ankle injury, him and Batman are discussing Red Hood before, like, you know, after they talk to like the Joker and stuff. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so Nightwing's not hurt just yet. The reveal of who Nightwing is didn't happen just yet either. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so basically they chase the dude who, like, you know, sniped those guys. This guy takes him to Ace Chemicals, where Batman has a flashback of creating the Joker when he knocked him over in the chemicals. So Nightwing and Batman went to go visit the Joker, and Joker has no idea who this person is. Then, like, you know, Batman listens to Black Mask, like, you know, conversation, knows where the gun shipment's gonna be at. Red Hood shows up. More of a chase. The chase is cool. And then Nightwing gets hurt. And this is when Batman figures out that Red Hood knows who he is. Okay, now I'm back on track. And we get like a flashback and everything of little young Robin. And the reason why Batman thought of this is because him and Nightwing was like talking about Red Hood about the moves that he does. And he's all like, you know, the moves that he do, that has to be taught. And they're kind of similar to the moves Batman used and to the moves Jason Todd uses and stuff when he was little. And we get these really cool like flashbacks and stuff of like a young Robin, you know, out in the field with Batman, happy, excited, beating up on bad guys and everything. Then it quickly goes to that until a much moodier, older Jason Todd, who's a teenager, breaking the collarbones of like bad guys and beating the snot out of them, having Batman yell at him, talking about you being too rough with these villains, and you know they're unable to talk now and they need a confession from them and everything, showing that this Robin, you know, doesn't follow the rules. And whenever Batman tells him to, you know, slow his behind down, he doesn't want to listen, which of course is what got him killed by the Joker, because he chased after him and everything when Batman was like fighting off like the villain, the goon squad and everything. So Batman is starting to kind of figure out who this guy is, but he's not 100% sure yet. And so while all this is going on, the Red Hood is taking over the underground empire and everything. he has like recruited gangsters who work for Black Mask, selling drugs and weapons and this and that, because he wants to control all of crime, because he feels like Batman's method of arresting criminals and sending them off to prison just does not work. He believes the only way to get rid of crime is to kill like your bad guys and then take over the organization and rule the streets that way and everything. Which, you know, I remember I had a social behavior class in college, and my teacher literally told us that all of crime could be eliminated from the world, but the police choose not to do it, because if they did, they would be out of a job, and then lawyers would be out of a job. Because if you get rid of all the criminals in the world and you start targeting people who, basically you have to target people who you know are going to commit a crime. You have to target and look for the signs that make a bad person, and then you stop them before they do it and everything. If you do something like that, it will literally take the police out of business. And of course, they ain't gonna want to lose their jobs. And of course, who the lawyers represent? People who normally get like arrested and stuff. And so it would mess up their empire and everything. And this is why crime would never fully go away, because the legal system, and also you wouldn't need a judge anymore, because there would be no more bad people committing crimes and stuff. And so, like, you know, Red Hood has this mentality and everything. So he's making life very hectic for Black Mask, to where Black Mask is getting very desperate, to the point where he busts Joker out of prison. You know, for a movie this small in scope, it amazes me how much dialogue and personality some of these side characters have. Like the villains, the goon squad, the security guards and everything. It feels like a real movie. But of course, you know, Red Hood is always 10 steps ahead. And like, you know, he figured, you know, stuff like this will happen. In fact, he's hoping something like this will happen. Because like, Black Mask hired these like assassins to take out like Red Hood, and they also try to take out Batman. And so they stop him, but Red Hood kills one of them. And so as he gets away, and Batman is starting to sympathize with this dude, because he's starting to figure out who this guy is, but a blood sample is all he needs. Once he gets that, then he knows exactly who Red Hood is, but then he starts to think how this could happen. There are some very chilling moments of him digging up Jason Todd's grave to open up the casket and see a fully fleshed out body still preserved in the casket, which is kind of like, why hasn't it decomposed 5 years later? Only for him to grab the body and realize it's a mannequin and everything. Because after Jason died, he was so distraught, he didn't do an autopsy on him. So he heads to the only man who could have brought him back to life, Ra's al Ghul, voiced by Jason Isaacs and stuff. And we get to see a very softer, kinder Ra's al Ghul, which is very, very strange. I've never seen one like that. He's actually very sympathetic, and he feels he blames himself because he's the one who hired the Joker to distract Batman, and then that's what caused Jason Todd to die. So as Batman's heading back to Gotham City, the Joker has decided he's going to lure out Red Hood by kidnapping Black Mask and all his people, and it literally is about to set them on fire. And that's crazy. They're inside a big truck, there's oil in there. He literally drops the lighter and they start to burn until Batman saves them. But Red Hood legit said, hey look man, this was all part of my plan. He made Black Mask so desperate that he would have to resort to the last thing and get the Joker and everything. Because the Joker doesn't like nobody stealing his persona, because the Red Hood persona is something that gets passed around. So he kidnaps Joker and he starts to beat him with the crowbar. Then there's this really cool epic fight between Batman and Red Hood, to where Red Hood literally takes off Batman's mask, and Batman's not fazed by it because he knows who's under the Red Hood. And of course, it's Jason. One thing I love is the attention to detail in this. First of all, you have Batman fighting with Batarang, something the Batman used to do in that WB Kid show. Second, when Batman's neck gets slashed, it slashes the costume, and you see underneath kind of like this chainmail mesh that's supposed to protect kind of like a bulletproof vest. Insane they would add that in the movie. I'm like, this is a kids cartoon movie. Like, they went to that much detail with it and stuff. Like, that's just insane. And like I said, it's an epic fight between Batman and Jason Todd. Batman whoops his behind the moment they get into that bathroom. Every time they get to the bathroom part, I'm like, oh, it's coming. He's gonna bust that man through the walls. And then we get some heartfelt stuff. Joker's locked up in the closet. Jason's talking to that. Well, he has a mask on, so Joker don't know who it is, but like his Robin Domino mask, and he's talking to Batman with a gun pointed at him and talking about why, like like out of all the criminals in the world, why in the world did you let the Joker live after what he did to him and stuff? And he even says Bruce's name out loud. And I don't know how Joker didn't hear that when he was in the closet, unless he was knocked out. But like, even Joker's surprised that this dude came back from the dead and everything. He's like, I blew you up. And because Jason just really, because the thing is, Jason looks at Batman like a father figure. And he doesn't understand why in the world is the Joker still alive. And he literally tells Batman, after the people Joker has murdered and crippled, meaning Barbara Gordon, how in the world is this dude even still breathing and everything? It should be simple. Like, if it was him, he would have hunted him down and killed him if he would have killed Batman and everything. But Batman has a code. He does not kill. He does not like to use guns. So Jason gives him an ultimatum. He tosses Batman a gun, puts another gun to Joker's head, and is like, look, man, one way one of us is gonna die. I'm either gonna shoot the Joker in the head, or you're gonna shoot me in the face to stop me from shooting Joker and everything. And Joker's just loving all this stuff. Like, this is truly a screw loose crazy Joker who's loving the idea that, like, either he's gonna get shot or Jason's gonna get shot and everything. But Batman refuses, and like a ninja, hits him with the Batarang to make his gun explode and everything. And so, but the dude has so many explosives on him, he literally had the room rigged with explosive. As Jason's getting like knocked down, Batman's gonna disarm the bomb, but Joker goes completely nuts. It's all like, nah, man, this is awesome. We're all gonna die together and everything. Like, this is like the coolest thing that's ever happened and stuff. Like, villain and hero and his sidekick son and everything. So Batman done something very unexpected. He listened to what Jason said and was actually gonna let the Joker die. He takes Jason, throws him out the window, so that Batman and Joker can explode in the bomb together, and they do, but somehow they live and everything. Batman somehow is not crippled, and the Joker got placed back in prison, and nobody knows where the Red Hood is because he can't find the body. So he knows he's probably out there somehow and probably survived and stuff like that. And then we see Batman just drive off to do what he always does, patrol the streets of Gotham. He's either gonna look for Jason or he's just gonna continue crime fighting. He's not gonna let this phase him and everything. Like, he's that tortured soul. But then you get the most heartbreaking thing ever, and that's the ending. You get like a flashback of Batman, getting ready to go on patrol and telling Jason, hurry up and suit up. It's your first night out as a little kid. And Jason comes out all happy and excited, does a flip on the Batmobile, and literally says, this is the best time of my life. And it's like, oh no, because dude, in about 10 years from now, you're going to get blown up, come back to life and go through all this trauma and stuff like that. And it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. How in the world has this not been a live action movie? And how in the world did Titan screw this up so bad on their television show? So yes, this is my one of my all-time favorite Batman movies. This is the best DC animated original movie universe thingy whatever ever. And I mean ever and stuff like that. And they've tried their best to recapture that gold with like Batman, I mean not Batman, but Superman, Man of Tomorrow, but I never liked that story. It just didn't click with me. This clicks so hard and everything. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.